Hello, this is Myra Elaine on the Buying Space Channel. I give myself quandaries all the time, and it was my full intent to read Proverbs chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. And as I have stated before, Solomon, when he gets to a certain point in Proverbs, he starts giving almost individual verses. Well, they are individual verses, but there's not like a theme that runs through a whole chapter or half a chapter, even, or a small cluster of verses within a chapter. Each verse speaks volumes. And so I wanted to read Proverbs 12:4 today because it's Mother's Day. But I probably won't get past verse 1. Here is verse 1. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 1. To learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. Well, first of all, I want to deal with the word stupid. We don't use that word. We don't call anyone stupid, or we shouldn't. It's not a polite thing. And if you are in a family or in a community that works with people with disabilities, not just physical disabilities, but cognitive disabilities, you don't use the word stupid, ever. But in this case, we're talking about the opposite of wanting to learn. To learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. Now, if you give correction to someone, whether it be drill sergeant like correction, or whether you're gently nudging people to, or doing like behavior modification, it's when people become brutish or stubborn. I believe that's what the meaning is here. Stupid is a very, very strong word. And Solomon is talking to his children in the book of Proverbs. He's mainly leaving instructions for predominantly his sons. And maybe he did get a little, I don't know, like a drill sergeant on occasion. But I find being harsh towards people about what they're doing wrong is not very wise in itself. That if you force people to do things, if you use the whipping stick, you're just teaching violence. You're not teaching learning. You're not helping people come to a good place about receiving instruction. Now, with extreme behavior, that's another video. But we're talking daily life, daily learning. And, well, let me give you an example. When Marty was young, Marty was having behavioral issues on the school bus. So the bus attendant tells me, oh, your child was doing this, your child was doing that. They act differently when you're around. And they act differently when I'm around because of the way I approach situations. See, in any situation in life, you have to think about what the other person's thinking, how they operate. If you want to cooperate, if you want to just be an authoritarian ogre, then things aren't going to work out. So I said to the lady, I said, you're sitting there and my child's doing this and you're saying this and your blood pressure's going up and you're getting all red in the face and you're getting all mad. The bus attendant was being broody and angry. I said, just look out the window. And she said, what? I said, yeah, look out the window and look at the sky and ask my child, why is the sky blue? She's like, what does that have to do? Oh, we have a flamber alert. I'll read that later. That's sad. But then my child will start telling you why the sky is blue. Now, this was, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade. Marty was very, very smart. So basically what you're doing in that situation, one, you're diffusing the oppositional attitude that you have towards my child and my child has towards you. You've entered into a battle of wills against another person. And this is true for all of life. If I get an email now from someone that's ticked off at me, I will take the good parts of the email or the questions they have, and I'll respond to that, and I'll thank them for whatever it is that they've done that's positive. And the things that they're saying that I've done that are negative, I ignore in my response. I diffuse the situation because this person has become unhappy with the situation. And usually it's circumstances and not people. I had a dead battery the other day, and it was because I was exhausted. And when I came in, I didn't check if my automatic lights were on or not. And they were on. So a family member comes out and jumps my car. And later I get a text from the same family member that says, turn off your lights. I think I know to do that. I mean, I explained to them how exhausted I was. I mean, if you're under 30, you can't understand what exhaustion is for somebody my age. And, but anyway, I just, I didn't say, I know that, like when a child, I mean, unless it's a very young child, touches their hand on the stove by mistake, they already know not to do that, don't they? And do you think telling them afterwards, don't put your hand on the stove, makes them feel good about themselves? They already know they made a mistake. And just because somebody makes a mistake, we should give them credence and acknowledgement that they are learning from their mistakes. Like if you won't give someone an opportunity because they've made a mistake, but they clearly have learned from it, but you do that to hold them down, that's not goodness. That's controlling. That's wickedness. When I look at people that have made mistakes, and I say, that person knows better now. And they're much better off than that person that hasn't made that mistake but won't receive instruction about it. Sometimes we see our brothers and sisters go through the trials and tribulations. A lot of it's because their own stubbornness to listen to instruction. And you take two people that are that way, and one of them goes ahead and makes that mistake because of that opinion they have that's wrong. And then they are better off after they've made the mistake, after they've lived through it. Because when we make mistakes, we gain experience. Now, would it be better if they were ready for instruction, to listen to other people or to see other people that have made the same mistake and not make it themselves? Absolutely. But then you compare them to that person that's not made that mistake. And what happens is the person that's not made the mistake, but is still stubbornly in the corner of, I'm right about this, but yet it hasn't tripped over the stick yet, so to speak. That person gets promoted, and the person that's made the mistake gets demoted. And the person that made the mistake is more likely to never, ever, ever repeat that mistake. And the person that's all confident, that's not made that mistake, but has the opinion that what they think is right and won't listen to anybody, is way more likely to make that mistake or another mistake or a plethora of mistakes because they're overconfident. It's good to be confident. It's absolutely good to be confident. But if you're confident and you won't listen to anybody else, that's an issue. I've met plenty of people that think they know everything. I mean, you can be that way at 10. It's a problem if you're over 30, or if you're in your 20s and you're in a position of responsibility and you're that way. I had an uncle who was not able to go to college, and he resented not being able to go to college, and he was angry about life, what the opportunities he had and didn't have. And when I went to college, he tried to trip me up. He tried to tell my parents this and that about me being in college. And when I was in college, I was an atheist. So later on in life, I started figuring out this uncle's actions. Where, why is he doing this? Where are his attitudes coming from? And I figured out that that's what it was, is he didn't get that opportunity. So he didn't want me or anyone else to have that opportunity because he didn't have it. It's just like the person that goes off when they break up with someone or they get a divorce and they unalive their ex because I can't have that, so nobody else can have that kind of thing. Of course, this wasn't a violent situation. It did affect my path and my family support. My parents were emotionally not involved in my success because the sibling of one of them was constantly filling their ear with all this stuff that was negative about it. So later, after I started figuring out what was going on, the mechanics, the psychology behind it, he came at me as an adult, after my life was pretty much set, and started saying these things again about college educated people. And he mentioned that I was atheist because of college. And I'm like, well, that's really, really weird, because I became an atheist when I was 15 years old, and I hadn't cracked open a college level textbook. I had read collegiate level material at that point, but none of it was a college textbook. You read the Iliad and the Odyssey sometimes in high school, and I was a very studious person, but he blamed all that on college. And even if I hadn't had the opportunity to go to college, I would have still been reading the classics just for fun on my own. So it's like I wasn't in college at 15. If I'd have lived in a different environment, because the environment I was in was very sexist. I mean, that was also part of the problem that was brought up about me attending college. But so it was like, you know, but he was just doing that. And it became painfully obvious to me, especially after I'd had like 15 hours of psychology, that that was what was going on, was this jealousy. And it wasn't just me, it was towards everyone, particularly his first wife, that because she directly prevented him from having opportunities by birthing all these children, which, I think he was involved in that, but nothing was ever his fault. And that's very brutish when you go around taking away or influencing other people not to give other people opportunities because you didn't have them. When I went and got my eye surgeries, I was very grateful that I got my eye surgeries. But some of those people that were involved in that got really nice, expensive cars. There were some other people that got suitcases of $10,000 in cash. And I didn't get any of that. But I got 2 really expensive eye surgeries that, if I would have paid for them, would have cost upwards of $20,000. And I was just grateful that I received what I needed not to go blind. But I went to a chat room at an auction, and someone was like, "Well, you didn't win the Lamborghini, did you?" How awful to put somebody on the spot in love like that. And I was like, I'm grateful for what I received. But it was just so weird. The woman, there was a woman and a man. The woman, when she hardly ever wore glasses, but when that live came on, she had her glasses on, and she was talking about her eyesight. And it was just clear that these people were jealous. Well, you didn't get the Lamborghini. Well, nobody got a Lamborghini, actually. But people get weird with jealousy, and they won't listen to any kind of instruction. If I said to them, "Well, you're just jealous, and you clearly are going to use this as an opportunity to fundraise so you can have a new pair of glasses or whatever it is that you need." And her eyesight was not bad off. Not like mine had been. I mean, not that it was a competition. Sometimes people want to race to the bottom, but you can't say anything to them. You can't say anything to them to change their mind, to have them see your perspective. And that was my uncle. There couldn't have been anything I could have said to him, even though I said, "By the way, I became an atheist at 15. I did take one college class at 15. It was from Appalachian Bible College. It was earlier that year, and it was about the Pentateuch. So I don't think my uncle, I'm like, "Do you think that college class made me an atheist?" It was a Bible college. It was this summer camp that I went to every single solitary year, and they took some of the teenagers and put them in a college lecture, that were interested. It was a very informative class, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know what I retained from it, but I enjoy reading the Torah, the Pentateuch now. And so maybe it did influence me from all those years ago. but I was ready, willing, able to, and eager to learn. I was an intellectual explorer, and I don't think that attending college changed any of that. I would have still been pursuing intellectualism regardless of, well, what my uncle said or whether I attended a college or not. Speaking of which, when I came back to Christ, I started reading the Bible on YouTube within months of doing that. And I feel a calling. I still feel a calling. But I have joined a denomination now. I agree with my denomination about, I would say, 90% of the issues, the topics. And I think that John Wesley was a wonderful, I don't want to say prophet. I don't want to put him on a pedestal to that level, but he was a wonderful leader, and what he says about theology makes really good sense to me. And I'm in the right denomination for me, but I don't know. I think that people choose to be stubborn about things. And there are so many choices for us to make. I have a problem. Well, let me say this, and let me get back to the education part of it. I can't become a minister in my own church because it requires a master's. Now, I have part of a master's. I have a bachelor's and I have part of a master's in an unrelated field. But at my age and disability level, I don't see me getting a master's in theology or any other related topic that would help facilitate me to become a minister. Jesus, when he was in the temple in Matthew chapter 7, he kind of told the Pharisees and Sadducees that what he said was from God. I feel what I say is from the Holy Spirit. So, well, the whole thing about women being ministers is a sidebar, definitely a different video, but I just do the best that I can with the level that I'm at. But I don't think that people, well, including Jesus, should be chided for talking about God or exploring the Bible or ministering in the denominations that allow for, no education, no formal education at all. Because Jesus was that way. Now, my uncle would have probably not wanted to have a preacher that had any kind of formal education, just like Jesus. And that's where I probably would agreed with him, that it wasn't necessary. If you're speaking, if you're being led by the Holy Spirit, but on the flip side, there's nothing wrong with having a PhD in theology. In fact, that's wonderful. And I think that we should all study to that level, given the opportunity. But just because it's not on a piece of paper doesn't mean the person doesn't have a master's or a bachelor's level of understanding of the scriptures. So it becomes very political, just like it was in the temple. In it wasn't Matthew chapter 7, no, John chapter 7. So it's like, reproach by who? To learn, you must love discipline. So who is reproaching you that they're calling you stupid. So there's more than one way to look at this. I'm not beyond reproach, and I obviously will listen, and I obviously can see things from other people's point of view. And when it comes to certain things, I've read it in the Word of God. Like the whole Ezekiel 38 thing. I don't think we're there. I honestly don't. But everybody's going around quoting from Ezekiel and Jeremiah and saying that certain people have been appointed by God. I absolutely think it's evil when people say they're appointed by God and they're doing things that are greedy and to obtain power. That's not the love of God. That's the love of money. And they're using the Bible and Bible passages. And it's not that I'm so stubborn that I won't listen, but you know what? I've read the prophecies. I've not studied them intently, but I've read them. And when the helicopter went down and one leader died in a helicopter crash, I found a passage that fit that perfectly. But that doesn't mean that that situation can't occur again. It talks about the end times and the eschatology of the end times, and that there are earthquakes. There have been earthquakes on the earth for at least thousands of years, if not longer. The earth was formed with planets and meteorites and things smashing together. Or, you can look at the Gulf and see that it's a meteorite site. So, I mean, we've had these things around for a very long time. And just because one might happen next week doesn't mean that we're at the end times. It's an indicator, yes. Do we have more earthquakes or other disasters now than we used to have? And that's one of those things with we have more access to information and we have access to it quicker. So maybe we are having the same amount of events that we had 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, but people just know about it more. Like, this is new. Well, this hasn't happened for 1,000 years, but that doesn't mean it's not on some kind of cycle that will happen again. So every time something happened, I mean, if you're having a hurricane or if you're having an earthquake or you're having a tornado and you're in the middle of it, yes, it seems like the end of the world. It definitely does. But that doesn't mean that this is the end of days. Because people through the eons have lived through leaders who have made war for their own profit and power and control. This is not anything new. But people don't want to hear that. People want to buy in to they're living in this generation that's blessed to see the end of days. I'd be blessed if I didn't see the end of days. It doesn't look like a fun time. To me, I've read Revelation. So why would the farmers in Texas want to give red heifers to the Jewish people to bring about the end of days? They're Christian ranchers. I'd like to hear an interview with them to see why that they would want to bring the end of time to the world at this point. I mean, I don't know if they have children or grandchildren, what their hopes and dreams are for the future of our planet, our country, and why they would want to do that. Was it just about the amount of good money that the Israeli government paid for the red heifers? I don't know. But those types of things that come, they're like self-fulfilling prophecies. But anyway, I didn't mean to get into eschatology so deeply. But you all have a wonderful and blessed week, and listen to other people. Don't be so set in your ways that you won't listen. If you're a younger person, you should listen to your parents and your elders. If they, unless they're doing immoral acts, you do what they say. They've been around a little bit longer, and listen to them until they stop making sense, at least. And be respectful of what they believe, even if you believe yourself that it's wrong. And you all have a wonderful and blessed day.